You are listening to Wize Move Wisdom, the podcast series brought to you by the Wize Move Society, the global movement where elders connect, share, learn, and create. In this fourth series, we focus on the wisdom of the elders, stories with a message. At its heart is a belief we hold deeply in our community that the collective wisdom of people who have truly lived is one of the most underused forces for good in the world today. Our guests aren't just sharing stories, but they are living proof of our community's core belief that the wisdom of the older generation is a force for global change, not a relic to be achieved. We strongly believe that a collective wisdom matters to the world right now, a world that is desperately calling out for change, positive change. We believe that by sharing the stories of the elders, we can contribute to a world that is more humane, more connected, more conscious, and more sustainable. A world we will be proud to leave to the next generations. My name is Ingun Bol, and I'm the founder of the Wize Move Society. Enjoy this episode of Wize Move Wisdom. So, welcome everyone, and I'm really happy that we're here today with Paddy Kennedy. We met, I think, a couple of years, it's already quite some years ago on the social media. We had some conversations, now and again that we needed to catch up, and now it was like, yes, we need to talk. And we need to do it on this podcast, Wisdom of the Elders. So, welcome, Paddy.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and it's really exciting to be here. I love what you're doing. Yeah, you have my total support. I think it's really important work that you're doing. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you for mentioning. Well, we're just going to jump right in, and we're talking here about the wisdom of the elders. What does that mean to you? Who are the elders? And do you see yourself as an elder?
I love this question. Yes, I see myself as an elder, not only because I'm on the cusp of turning 74, but I discovered that being an elder doesn't necessarily have that much to do with age.
No.
Because, as you know, I have a dream of putting young people on a stage with elders for that intergenerational exchange of wisdom, because it's my experience that some of these young ones are very, very wise and we need to listen to them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we can't just think, oh, 65, 60 or 65, you're an elder now. But I think what really makes an elder is not just the number of years, but it's the reflection. It's looking back at the lives we have led, the world we have lived in, the world we continue to live in, and looking upon it with curiosity and with a sense of still discovering. I think that we ought to keep learning as long as we're alive. I mean, you and I have talked about this AI. Here we are at this age. Who ever knew that at this stage in our lives, we would be dealing with this artificial intelligence, and it has moved into such a main place in our lives. So for me, what qualifies as a wise elder is not necessarily tied to years. Why I think youth have wisdom and are like elders is because they're curious and they question and they're not willing to just sit back. Now it will change, of course, as they get into more of that middle stage of life there, where like you have to support yourself, you have to pay all those bills, so life does change. But I think if being an elder means to question, to be curious, and to reflect, then count me in. I'm gladly call myself an
An
elder.
elder, yes. Well, welcome to the club. Yes, absolutely. And I would absolutely say that you're an elder with all your wisdom and, still also sharing your wisdom. So active, always finding that new opportunity and finding, and I love that in you, that adventure also. We talk about it later, but that curiosity and asking questions. And you're so right when you mentioned that intergenerational perspective. I really do believe that you have those wise young people who, we probably will not call them the elders, but there are these old souls, they bring already that wisdom into the world. So that's really fantastic. I love that. So it's not about just being an elder, but it's also about sharing your wisdom. And mostly we use that tool of the storytelling. How important is storytelling in your life?
It's everything. I mean, everything is a story. What we're doing right now is a story. The great American poet Muriel Rukeyser said, the universe is not made up of atoms, it's made up of stories. I think stories are very, very crucial. Stories can be great learning tools that when we share a story, we can offer so much wisdom, so much knowledge. I think stories also, we create the story that we live. Our lives are stories. We can change the narrative of our stories. In my work, I do a lot of narrative therapy with clients because they get caught telling themselves a story that I question. I ask them, question that story, because that story is leading you to depression, to loneliness. Is that really the story you want to tell? So it's not only the stories that we tell to each other about our shared lived experiences, but I think it's really important that people look inside at the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we say about the world, because the stories we tell ourselves are the stories we live. So if you see things as negative, then the world will be negative. We'll probably get into it a little bit, but I was born with a physical disability. Most people don't know about this because I walk and I look very healthy. But for many years, doctors, I used to frustrate them because they'd say, when are you going to get it through your head that you're permanently disabled and you're never going to be able to work? And for a long time, Ingan,
Wow,
I believed
thank
that
you.
story. Yeah, I believed that story. And woe is me. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. And then one day an elder came to me, and I was in my 40s, and she said, Paddy, you are not disabled. You are differently abled.
Yeah.
And I changed the story and I changed the narrative. And I never went back to any of those doctors, by the way.
Yeah.
And and that's what I mean about stories are so important. The internal stories, and those are the stories that shape the way we get wise. So that point of changing your story and reflecting, and I understand now, and people don't understand this, being born with that was the greatest gift I could have been given. It has taught me compassion. It has taught me tenderness. It has taught me courage and bravery. And these are things that I bring to the world, that I bring to my work, and I carry with me. So stories are really important, but we must be careful of how we are living the story, how we're telling the story. It's up to us because they do connect us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I love what you're saying about, be aware of the story that you tell yourself. But I think that is one of the things that is important. But also, and we've been discussing that with our members in the Wisdom Well, it is also about hearing others sharing their story about being the victim, and you, as the elder, being able to learn them how to change their perspective from
Yeah,
being the victim
yeah,
into
yeah,
being the victor, and that they learn to,
yeah,
to share that story that is
yeah,
positive, and that they will learn how to to
yeah.
share it in a very positive way. Yeah.
Do you know, I read a book years ago called The Secret Life of Pronouns. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm into language, so I'm a bit of a nerd. And it was one story that was really interesting because they were talking about, they had done these studies in group support for people who were chronically ill or cancer or whatever.
Okay.
And I experienced this myself. People go in and they're like, I. They're still focused. That's the way they're telling the story. But after about 4 weeks, the I changes to we.
Mhm.
And the point this book was making was that the I, illness, we, wellness.
Oh, I like
It
that.
was just mind altering because when we give voice to the story, and this is where elders can play a really important role, when we when we allow people to give voice to their story and they share their story with us, we can help them go from the I in illness to the we in wellness. I think when I read that, it just has stayed with me. What a profound, see, in the secret book of pronouns, who would ever know that?
I love it, and it's actually it's very close from I to we. Well, we think it's close, but it's a long journey. Yeah, and I love it that you go from illness to wellness. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. See,
mm,
there's
yeah,
these little secrets everywhere. There's little nuggets everywhere if we're curious and if we've got our eyes open and if we're paying attention to the great gift of life, short as it is. There's so much to be seen, to be experienced.
yeah, yeah, and it is short, so we have to enjoy every moment.
To the best of our ability.
Yes.
Sometimes it's tough. I'm not always like, I'm living in a war zone. I'm not terribly happy about
Yeah,
that.
I know.
But
Yeah,
that's another story.
yeah, yeah.
How do we live with that story? Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move into your story, and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, something that made you to who you are today. I really would have to you to add that little girl, who were you as a child? What kind of a family do you come from?
Well, being born Canadian, I am a proud Canadian, in the 1950s. You, as a child, were either, if you were a girl, you were a figure skater, and if you were a boy, you were a hockey player. This is a big part of the national identity.
Yeah.
So I began as a little girl at 10 to become a very serious figure skater. I began to train at 10. I don't know how I had this. I came from a very rough childhood. I had an alcoholic father and a very violent home. So I went to the skating rink and I think I just skated out all my fears and all my concerns. And I found the great art of self-expression. At 10, I knew that I wanted to train for the Olympics, which is, I mean, unusual, but that dream never left me. And I trained very, very hard, skating several hours. I only went to school half days from grade 7 on. I was training for the 1972 Olympics. I missed the trials for the team by 1/10 of a point, if you can imagine, at 18. Simply because one of the judges did not like my coach. She wanted me to train under the coach that she liked, so she placed me second to last, which meant in my total points.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about figure skating and all sports like that, where you're marked in public, my coaches used to say, this is how you develop character. So everybody was very sad and very concerned. And there was a secret part of me that was kind of relieved because they put me in sports at 10 because I had this chronic pain disorder and nobody could figure out what it was. So they thought, oh, it's just growing pains. Put her in sports and she'll grow out of it. But I didn't. And it got worse and worse. So by the time I missed the opportunity for the Olympic team, there was a part of me that was like, oh, thank goodness, I can stop. I was training 8 hours a day. They don't train that way
Yeah.
anymore because sports medicine has said, no, no, no. So I became a coach. That's why I can say I've been coaching. It'll be 54 years in September because I started out in athletics. There was no business coaching then. And I coached for a while, but I ended up, the illness just wouldn't leave me alone. One reason why I live in warm countries is because I can't take the cold. It just upsets the whole apple cart and I end up immobile. I can't move. So I
Mm-hmm.
went from being wheelchair and crutches and canes. And the problem with you, young lady, is you won't accept this is happening to you. But when I was just before I was 21, I had a doctor say, I hate to tell you, but we think you have a very rare form of bone cancer, and we don't know if you have more than a year to live. I was just about to turn 21. So he said, if you could do anything in the world, what would that be? I said, I'd get my passport and I'd go to Ireland to see my mom and my little brother, because my little brother was studying music in Dublin. So I went and I got there, and my mom's girlfriend, I always remember, she was a short little woman, Carmen. She said, in a very strong Irish accent, you need to go to the west coast of Ireland, to County Kerry, and you need to see a man named Daniel Lane, because he comes from a long line of healers. So I thought, well, what do you got to lose, right? So I went by myself and I met him, and he was the first person to say, if you think you're dying, you'll be dead in a year. And then he said in his very Irish way, and may you be 30 minutes in heaven before the devil knows you're dead. But he was the first one, when I look back now, he was saying, if you believe that story,
It's true.
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that began a long journey of traveling quite far into, I don't want to call it alternative medicine, because I don't think we should ever abandon Western medicine. I call it complementary medicine. Yeah. And I studied with Bush doctors, medicine people, Ayurvedic people, acupuncturists. I studied with them for many, many years. And in a way, they felt like they were lost years, because I had had such a disciplined life, and self-expression through music and on the ice was such a big thing. And in all those years, people would say to me, Paddy, you have a really good voice for radio. And I would think, gee, does that mean I don't have a good face for TV? So in 1990, I was in Toronto, and I registered in the National Institute of Broadcasting. And we went in, we were doing both television and radio. And at one point we had to choose. Everybody pretty much was choosing television, the glamour.
Yeah.
I chose radio because I found that the voice gave me back that feeling of self-expression. And I learned how important the voice is in telling our story. Because when you're in the radio booth, or you're out in the field as a little roving reporter, you don't have any body language. You don't have anything. You just have your voice to tell the story in such a way that people don't go to another channel.
Yeah.
And I found this like replacing my love for figure skating. And I discovered that voice is the art that I had been longing for. And so we'll just fast forward, because, we're putting 74 years in a little can here, but that was really the beginning of the life I live now. I had been doing some communication work with master's degrees and PhD students, but when I started to do voice, and I was only what they call a stringer, because I could never take full-time work, because I never knew if I was going to be able to make it or not because of my health. Okay. I interviewed the Dalai Lama. And from there, though, my confidence came back. And now the work I do in communication training and as a strategic communication advisor, voice is central to all of the work that I do, and storytelling. And how are you telling the story? And how is the voice? Because the voice gives away a lot. Your confidence, your authenticity, all of those things come from this magnificent little instrument. So it went from, that's why I say, no, it's not a sad story. It's a beautiful story. And if I had stayed in the world of figure skating, as many as my friends did, they are now completely disabled with arthritis, because they've been in the cold all their lives.
Yeah.
And I'm living in the UAE in the desert, and I'm living a life that I love, and I'm helping people all the time with their voice and with their story. Whether you're a CEO or a startup entrepreneur, it's the same show. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, wonderful. Yeah. Life offers you so many opportunities, but you just need to see them, what you have been doing, and moving from figure skating to radio to what you're doing now is because you are curious. You have that adventurous mind, and you see, okay, this is what I can do, and this is what my next step can be, and you take that next step.
Yeah.
I love that.
People say, oh, you're brave. Maybe, but I'm a widow. I have a disability, and I have to make a living. So is it bravery or is it necessity? I mean, sometimes, a girl's just got to do what a girl's got to do to keep a roof over her head. And I'm very blessed that I get to do every day what I love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing. So I guess some kind of bravery, yes. But my mom told me, I had a beautiful mom. And I remember when I was about 20, she said, you know, the world is yours also, and you need to go out and find your place in it. And she also said, you were born with God gave you a voice, and it's your God-given right to use your voice. She wasn't an educated woman. She was a battered wife with 4 kids, but she had a wisdom and she had a bravery. So another reason why I'm brave, even though she's been gone a while, if I start getting all weak, she's going to come right back down and say, girl, that's not how I taught you to be. Buck up, put on your big girl panties and get back out there.
Yeah.
And so again, but you know, Ingan, this is from reflection. We have to reflect on our lives, on the world we live in. You know, that's why I think I am doing what I'm doing. I'm not special. I'm self-educated. Just don't accept no as the first answer. Listen to yourself. Listen to your heart and to your soul. And trust that you can follow it and it will take you where you want to go.
I like that. Yeah. I would like to build on that brave part, you know, being brave and because well you share, you know, you needed to live in a warmer space, warmer area for your you know, your health. Well, if you live in Canada, you could have moved to Florida, you know, that would have been the easy choice. But you didn't, you
Well,
know.
I have lived in the States quite a bit. I lived in California. I lived in New York for almost 10 years. As a Canadian right now, I don't want to get political, but most of us are boycotting the United States right now because
Are
of
you? Okay.
political affairs. So yeah, most of us are
Yeah.
because we're not going to be the 51st state, and that's just not going to happen. So you might as well stop talking about that. Why? Well, because Florida is here, but I lived in Belize. It's just across the Gulf. I lived in Barbados.
Well,
I
I'd
don't.
love to hear that story, you know, because that is part of, you know, who you are and the steps that you took. So share us a little bit about that and
You
where you
know,
ended up right now in that war zone.
well, it wasn't a war zone when I came here.
No, but you know, let's start with Belize and, you know,
Well,
that part.
it was, first of all, it had come to the fact where I was aware that the cold was, and I lived on the west coast of Canada where it's not like 30 below, but it's damp, it's, you know.
Yeah.
And so I forget what year, maybe 85 or 86, I was going to university at the time, Simon Fraser University, and I wanted to do my studies in Barbados. I was studying Commonwealth literature and the sociology. And so the university was very kind to me and they allowed me to do my studies in Barbados. So I went there because I was studying the poetry of a poet named Edward Camus Braffet, and I loved his work. I didn't really understand what he was talking about because it was all in dialect, but it had a rhythm and a beat that I just loved. So I went there and it was very expensive. And I found I couldn't really afford to live there. So I had been in Belize with a colleague, a sociologist, anthropologist, and he was doing some work and I went as his research assistant. And that was the year before I went to Barbados. And I noticed that while I was there, I felt really good. So I thought, well, okay, Belize was very underdeveloped. And I was a little bit scared to go, but I thought, but it's cheaper and I can afford it. So the next year I went to Belize and I had my laptop that was about bigger
Yeah,
than
yeah.
they are now. And I had to attach it to a car battery. I had to take the battery all the time to the petrol station to get it charged. And I began to discover how I just felt different. My body, I wasn't plagued by all that. So I would go home in the summer. My former husband, my first husband and I, we had arranged a mutual custody thing. So my son would come and spend months with me wherever I was. And then he would go back and then I would come home in the summer and, you know, and I was able to sublet my place. From after a couple of years in Belize, I ended up going to Papua New Guinea because I got some work there with the university, with the department. I don't have a degree. I've studied, but I
Well,
don't have
we
a degree.
studied a lot, yeah.
But you know, if you have where there's a will, there's a way. I never had plans really. I never thought in my wildest dream, oh, and then I'm going to go to Papua New Guinea I went there for a while, loved it, was working with the university there, doing a lot of stuff, registering the violence against women. It was a very violent country. When the chancellor of the university told us all that we needed to have a gun, no. I'm a Canadian. We don't carry guns. And I'm not going to live in a country where I'm going to be shooting citizens. It's just not going to happen. I'm not doing that. So I went back to Canada and things just carried on. And then I had a client from Saudi Arabia, and because I put my work on Skype in 2009. Everybody told me I was nuts. It would never work. I had been living in New York. My mom got hit by a car very badly. I left New York and my dear husband in New York to take care of my mom. We actually didn't think she was going to make it, but my mother, no stopping my mother. And so she made it. And while I was there taking care of her, my husband very suddenly passed away in the night. So, well, I'm just going to stay back in Canada. I don't want to be a Canadian widow in New York. New York's a tough town. So I stayed in Canada, started my work on Skype, and I had a client in Saudi Arabia. And he said, you should bring your work to the Middle East. So I was telling my older brother this at the time. He was the CEO of a company. And he said, that's a good idea. I'm going to retire. Can I join your company and we'll go together? Because he just didn't think I could go as a woman on my own, because that's the story, right? So we made this plan, and he went off for a little vacation in Greece. And while he was in Greece, he got very sick. And I managed to get him home. And boy, 6 weeks later, didn't he just die in my arms? Broke my heart. I thought, well, there goes the Middle East. Now my mom, my husband died, my mom died, my friends died, my brother died. It all happened within 18 months. And I remember I was 65. And I remember sitting in my apartment in beautiful Vancouver. And I said to myself, if you don't get out of here, because everywhere I looked, I had memories of them all. If you don't get out of here, I had just read that depression among elders, among seniors, is really going up. And I thought, okay, you got to get out of here. So a girlfriend of mine said, Patty, this weekend I'm attending a vision board workshop for women. Why don't you attend? I'm like, I don't even have a vision. She said, oh, get over yourself. You want to take the company to the Middle East? I dare you. So I went. She canceled. She didn't go. I went. It was so funny, Ingen, because the young lady that gave it, she was like, okay, girls, now it's really important that we get our visions together, because, life is over at 50.
Oh, nice.
And I'm sitting there like, it is. I didn't get the memo. So I want to have a baby. I want to find a boyfriend. So I waited till all of them had said what they wanted. And then she was ready to go. And I said, may I just say something, please, before we start? And she said, yeah. And she was a little intimidated. I was the only old gal there. I had just turned 65 about a month before. I said, I just want to let you know, life actually begins at 50, because the children have grown up. If you still have your partner, you're not impressing them anymore. They know you. It all begins. This is the time when you really can create your vision. And I said, so I'm here because I want to create a vision of taking my company first to the Middle East and then globally. And 3 weeks later, I got a phone call from Oman. We've heard about your work and we'd like to invite you to come and speak at a conference. And I don't know where it came from. I said, well, I can't possibly travel halfway around the world for just one job. You'd have to find me other work. And they did. They found me more work in Muscat, in Oman. Then they found me work in Qatar. And then they found me work in Kuwait.
Oh, wow.
So I went, I did it on my way home. Reputation is everything. I got a message. I stopped in Ireland to see some gals I'd gone to university school with in Paris way back 50 years ago. And I got a message from a woman in Dubai. Would you like to come back in the fall? I can't possibly do that unless you find me more work. And they did. And the next thing you know, I just kept getting invited back. And then I came during COVID to do some work in Bahrain. I stopped in Oman. I had a business partner in Oman. They locked Oman down. I couldn't get out. I never did get to Bahrain. I haven't been back to Canada since. And here we are. That's the story.
Well, it's the short version.
That's a short version. But yeah, you don't want to get into all the heartbreak. No, I'm teasing.
Well, what I just love, it is, it is like that timeline, like you're telling, okay, it's Belize and Barbados and Papua New Guinea and, all these things. But there's a story in each part of it. And it is, it tells us so much about your mindset, about, being open to whatever life offers you, and you're going to grab, to hold on to it. And that's I really love that. So, you've already told quite some stories. And I really think, and I talked with other people I interviewed, there's a book in there, you probably already have written it. But it's really great. So if you tell a story like this, and you probably also do that when you're invited as a speaker. What is it that you want people to get out of it? What are the lessons learned?
Well, the first one simply is, if I can do it, this girl from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, with no special gifts, just a curious nature.
Mm-hmm.
If I can do it, you can do it. Watch the story you're telling. The world is not a scary place. I've done most of my travels on my own. It's not a scary place. I mean, there's scary things that happen. I'm not Pollyanna here. I understand. And I've had, when I lived in Paris, I had, you got attacked. I mean, it happens, but the world is a beautiful place. There are far more kind people than there are nasty people. Human kindness is alive and well. You must trust that. I have found that for every nasty person, there's at least 3 people that will come to give you a hand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's first of all that, I guess it comes back to this thing about bravery, which is really just believe in yourself. One of the hardest things for all of us is to trust the process. Like, I never had a plan. Okay, I had a plan after a while. I'd go to Barbados, and that was working. So I made a plan then to go to Belize. From then on, I had no plan. Okay, I thought I'd come into the Middle East, but I thought I'd go. I actually thought I'd live in the south of Spain because my brother and I were going to get Irish citizenship, because we didn't know that we could come we didn't know how safe it is here, and very safe for women.
Yeah.
In the United Arab Emirates, it's illegal to yell at a woman, to curse at her. You can go to jail.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very safe. So I had none of those ideas. So and people say, oh, you're brave. And I say, I'm not really brave. I'm curious. I'm not a religious person per se. I do believe that the great creator creates us. I don't have a religion attached to it. I have a native friend in Canada who calls the creator the kind one. And I
Okay.
believe, and I use that a lot. And I will say, okay, please, kind one, help me find my way today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared. I still get scared, And so Helen Keller said it, and she ought to know. She said, life is either a daring adventure or it is nothing. We're put on the planet. There's only one of us from all time. We're born with gifts. Most of us are given great opportunity. I don't think anybody has to do it, but if you got that little bit of what could I be in the world? I believe that we're born to be all that we can be. Marianne Williamson said, we are born to make manifest the glory of God. Now, she's religious, I'm not, but we are born to make manifest the glory of creation. We are part of creation. It's not a sad story. All that sad stuff is a gift, because you know what you want from learning what you don't want. You can't know what you want if you don't know what you don't want. So it's not a magical secret. It's to believe in yourself. A lot of it is confidence. Trust the process. I am reading a book about my life. It's called Standing in the Hands of the Creator.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I still sometimes find myself, and I just say, okay, great kind one, I'm standing in your hands and I'm going to wait for whatever. And I just get a feeling, and it's not a thought process. So I don't know. I'm a bit of a nut job, I think, but I have a wonderful life.
Well, a nice nut job, yeah.
A nut job full of stories. But, you crack open the nut, go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
So that's
Wonderful.
what I tell people.
Yes. Well, I just love, we've been talking for 30 minutes, and there's already so much on the table for people to learn from, to get inspired, to find hope in your story,
Yeah.
to be to feel like, if she can do it, I can do it. That
Absolutely.
feeling, that they are enough to take that next step. Yeah, I love it, and this is what storytelling does to people, and this is also, you could never tell this story when you were still 18. You would be able to tell a wonderful story about what you have been doing with ice skating. Absolutely. But this reflection, that lived experience, that wisdom that is all combined in this story is really fantastic. So we have to come to a closure. Um, is there anything that you feel that you still want to share?
I just want to let people know that there's different ways of looking at the world, and find the way that makes you happy. Find the way that makes you feel satisfied. Life is short. Life is beautiful. Live it well. Make your story something that you're proud of, that it will be the legacy that you will leave, that you will be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
Just go for it.
Yes, go for it. I'm
Go
not
for
going to
it.
add anything more. I'm going to thank you for being here and sharing your stories and sharing your wisdom as a wise elder. And it was really, really fantastic to have you here in this podcast interview.
As we say here, mashkur, Latin, Arabic for with great gratitude. Mashkur. Shukran.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you for
Thank
that.
you so much.
Thank you for joining us and listening to our podcast, Wisdom of the Elders, Stories with a Message. I hope you enjoyed this story and were inspired. If you feel aligned with the podcast brought to you by the Wize Move Society, please follow us on Spotify. But of course, we would like to welcome you at our global online community, where you can share your wisdom in deep conversations with our members. But we also would like to hear your story and learn from it. All stories matter. We believe that our collective wisdom can bring change at many levels. In the next episode, we travel to a different part of the world, another elder, another story, another lesson carried across lifetime. Until then, share your story. Someone is waiting for it.